Good evening and welcome to NTD News. I'm Stephanie Cox. Here are today's top stories. The Kyle Rittenhouse trial reaches a pivotal moment. The 18-year-old defendant takes the stand for the first time to testify. And a prosecutor asks questions that don't sit well with the judge. President Biden wanting to alleviate supply chain woes with the newly passed $1 trillion infrastructure package. The deal will invest $50 billion in seaports and airports. President Biden's nominee for a Treasury position taking heat for a now viral video where she outlines her standpoint on climate change. Meanwhile, a nonpartisan organization reveals how much Biden's budget bill would allocate to that very cause. The White House aggressively pushing kids 5 to 11 to get the COVID-19 vaccine. They say 900,000 kids have already done so, but movie star Matthew McConaughey is against requiring the vaccine for young kids. Veterans Day is coming up, and today New York City celebrated 4 veterans for their service. We speak with one of the honored veterans. A lot happened in Wisconsin today. After days of testimony from prosecution witnesses, Kyle Rittenhouse, the defendant, testified for the first time. Here's the update.
Facing multiple murder charges, 18-year-old Kyle Rittenhouse waives his right to remain silent to testify before the jury. The defendant claims he acted in self-defense last year when he shot 3 people, 2 of whom died, in Kenosha, Wisconsin. But Rittenhouse had trouble describing the moments leading up to the shots he fired at Joseph Rosenbaum, one of the men he killed. Judge Bruce Schroeder called for a recess moments after this. Based on video evidence, Rosenbaum chased Rittenhouse, who was armed with a rifle. After shooting Rosenbaum, the defendant says he tried to turn himself in to the authorities.
You say I'm trying to get to the police. Why were you trying to get to the police?
So I didn't do anything wrong. I defended myself.
Video evidence shows he was attacked multiple times on his way to the police line, which Rittenhouse says led to the subsequent shootings. Assistant prosecuting attorney Thomas Binger cross-examined the defendant.
Everybody that you shot at that night you intended to kill, correct?
I didn't intend to kill them. I intended to stop the people who were attacking me.
By killing them?
I did what I had to do to stop the person who was attacking me.
By killing them?
2 of them passed away, but I stopped the threat from attacking me.
At least twice, the judge sent the jury out of the courtroom due to Binger's line of questioning. He accused the prosecutor of improperly trying to introduce testimony that the judge prohibited.
This was the subject of a motion. I'm well aware of that. And the court left the door open.
For me, not for you.
My understanding of
You should have come and asked for reconsideration. I indicated a bias towards denial is what I did. Held it open with a bias towards denial. Why would you think that that made it okay for you, without any advance notice, to bring this matter before the jury? I was astonished when you began your examination by commenting on the defendant's post-arrest silence. That's basic law. It's been basic law in this country for 40 years, 50 years. I have no idea why you would do something like that. And it gives, I'll leave it at that. So I don't know what you're up to.
The defense told the judge that Binger is either forgetting the court's rulings or deliberately attempting to cause a mistrial. This is when a trial is invalidated because of a problem with procedure. In a mistrial without prejudice, a new trial would have to take place. But the defense has asked for a mistrial with prejudice. If this is granted, the state cannot file their current charges against Rittenhouse again.
And someone was caught filming the jurors in the Rittenhouse trial. That's according to the judge presiding over the case. This after a video was posted on Facebook claiming jurors are being photographed in the courtroom.
The Wisconsin judge who is presiding over the Kyle Rittenhouse murder trial is requiring greater efforts to protect jurors' identities. This comes after deputies caught someone filming the jurors at their pickup location Tuesday morning.
You're aware, of course, of the incident at the bus pickup this morning, and I've been assured that the officers had the video which had been taken has been deleted.
Judge Schroeder said he's instructed officers to confiscate the phone if it happens again.
Very sensitive to this entire issue and are on guard about it. Thank you.
The jurors' identities have been sealed by the court, and those allowed inside the courtroom aren't permitted to photograph or videotape the jurors. Earlier this week, a video circulated on social media alleging that people were at the courthouse photographing jurors. The Kenosha County Sheriff's Department told Fox News they're investigating the claims. The allegations were made by activist Cortez Rice, who's said to be the nephew of George Floyd. Here he is in the now-deleted Facebook video.
I ain't even gonna name the people that I know that's up in the Kenosha trial. But there's cameras in there. It's definitely cameras up in there, and there's definitely people taking pictures of the juries and everything like that. We know what's going on.
Cortez also protested outside an apartment Saturday, which he claimed was the home of the judge in the Daunte Wright trial. Protecting the jurors' identities is vital to ensure that they don't get doxxed and intimidated. During jury selection for the Rittenhouse trial, some potential jurors raised concerns for their safety if their involvement was made public. Jim Battellini, NTD News, New York.
President Biden is promoting his $1 trillion infrastructure deal as the solution to solving supply chain issues. We take a look at what the deal would do and what caused the supply chain crunch in the first place.
The ports of Long Beach and Los Angeles are responsible for handling 40% of all imports that come into the U.S. in containers. Now, they're handling the most in their history, but ships are still lined up off the two ports waiting for their containers to be unloaded. Now, the Biden administration plans to strengthen the supply chain by investing $50 billion in U.S. ports and airports through the newly passed infrastructure deal.
It's going to modernize our ports with $17 billion in investment. $17 billion in investment. We're going to reduce congestion. We're going to address repair and maintenance backlogs, deploy state-of-the-art technologies, and make our ports cleaner and more efficient.
What's behind the supply chain bottleneck? 70% of global trade is shipped in containers. As the demand for goods went up last year, the demand for cargo ships also skyrocketed. According to the Howe Robinson Container Ship Charter Index, the price of chartering a giant container ship is 10 times more than it was a year ago. And according to the Freightos Index, the cost of shipping a standard container from China to the U.S. West Coast hit a new record in October, $20,586. That's almost twice what it cost in July.
American families have been able to buy more products. But guess what? They're not going out to dinner and lunch and going to local bars because of COVID. So what are they doing? They're staying home, they're ordering online, and they're buying product. Well, with more people with money buying product and less product to buy, what happens? The supply chain's the reason.
While ports in California are overwhelmed, Texas and Florida are offering to help and are inviting ships to offload at their ports. The Texas governor wrote earlier this month, "We can get goods out faster and at a lower cost than California due to our centralized location." Professor Christopher Tong from UCLA calls the supply chain crunch a wake-up call. He says American consumers in the pandemic have come to understand overdependence on foreign supplies. For some products, it's time for us to produce them in the U.S.
Here we look at President Biden's nominee for a position in the Treasury Department. She recently said that she wants a group of smaller energy companies to go bankrupt to address climate change. NTD's Kevin Hogan has more on her policies and the criticism she's taken for some of them.
Saule Omarova, she's Biden's pick to be the comptroller of the currency. That's in the Treasury Department. Their job is to oversee all major banks in the U.S., among other duties. A video of Omarova speaking about climate change recently surfaced to the broader public. Media reports said she made the following statement in March during the Jane Family Institute's 2021 Social Wealth Seminar Series.
For certain troubled industries and firms that are in transitioning. And here what I'm thinking about is primarily coal industry and oil and gas industry. A lot of the smaller players in that industry are going to probably go bankrupt in short order. At least we want them to go bankrupt if we want to tackle climate change, right?
Her remarks about smaller energy companies going bankrupt come as a nonpartisan organization found that Biden's social spending plan would allocate about $500 billion to climate efforts. Those remarks of hers have also received criticism. For example, Senator Ted Cruz said, Biden's pick of Moscow State University's Saule Omarova for the office of the comptroller of the currency is a grave threat to our economy. She wants to destroy energy independence, wants to nationalize consumer banks, and she has called to effectively end banking as we know it. Her banking policies have come under fire from others as well, specifically from American Bankers Association President and CEO Rob Nichols. Nichols sounded the alarm about Omarova's policies, which would effectively nationalize community banks in the U.S., stop banks from making their own risk assessment when lending, and merge all state banks with the federal banking system. Omarova's push to nationalize U.S. banks mirrors what's done in communist China. There, major Chinese banks are state-owned, and private ones are insignificant in comparison. Omarova got a degree from Moscow State University a few years before the collapse of the USSR, and Banking Committee ranking member Senator Pat Toomey asked to see her thesis on Karl Marx's economic analysis. NTD is in the process of contacting Omarova for comment. Kevin Hogan, NTD News.
The White House is promoting its program to get kids aged 5 to 11 vaccinated. This includes opening new family-friendly vaccination sites and school clinics. A doctor shares his thoughts with NTD on whether vaccinating young children is necessary. NTD's Allison Lee brings us more.
Good morning, and thanks for joining us.
The White House COVID-19 response team says that their program promoting the vaccine to kids 5 to 11 is hitting full strength this week. There are now 20,000 vaccination sites for young kids, including family doctors' offices, pharmacies, and clinics at schools.
By the end of the day today, we estimate that over 900,000 kids ages 5 through 11 will have already gotten their first shot. And through pharmacies alone, 700,000 additional appointments are already on the calendar at local pharmacies.
The U.S. has around 28 million kids aged 5 to 11. In addition to vaccinating more of them, the White House wants to reduce the number of unvaccinated adults and adolescents. The White House says vaccine requirements are helping to reach this goal.
Vaccination requirements have helped reduce the number of unvaccinated Americans ages 12 and older by almost 40%. From about 100 million in late July to under 60 million now.
But the idea of giving the COVID-19 vaccine to young kids isn't catching on with everyone. Dr. Jeff Myers from Summit Ministries tells NTD this is the first time in history that he's aware of that children are required to get a vaccine for a disease that they are by and large not susceptible to.
If you take a look back at, say, the measles vaccine in 1963, before the measles vaccine, 2.8 million children died every year from measles around the world. This was a disease that directly threatened those, especially those who were under the age of 5. The measles vaccine came along, parents accepted that, and the number of cases of measles is very, very low.
The doctor says there were around 140,000 measles deaths worldwide this past year. In comparison, the number of 5 to 18-year-olds dying from COVID-19 in the U.S. from January 2020 to the end of October of this year was 474.
So we're asking parents to give an experimental vaccine to their children when there's almost no evidence at all that the children are at risk of this disease, but the older people who want to be protected.
San Francisco recently became the first city in the country to announce a vaccine passport requirement for kids aged 5 to 11. Allison Lee, NTD News.
Green Bay Packers $300,000 for violating its COVID-19 protocols. Quarterback Aaron Rodgers and teammate Alan Lazard were fined as well.
An NFL review found that the Green Bay Packers and 2 of its players had not followed the league's COVID-19 requirements. The league's policy prohibits unvaccinated players from gathering outside of team facilities in groups of more than 3. The NFL determined that quarterback Aaron Rodgers and wide receiver Alan Lazard had both attended a Halloween party without being vaccinated. Rodgers and Lazard were each fined just under $15,000. The Packers were fined $300,000 for not reporting the violation or disciplining the players. Rodgers previously said in an interview on the Pat McAfee show that he's allergic to an ingredient used in the Pfizer and Moderna vaccines, and he didn't want to get the Johnson & Johnson vaccine because he heard about people having adverse reactions to it. Packers president and CEO Mark Murphy said, "We respect the league's findings and we recognize the importance of adherence to the COVID protocols to keep our team and organization safe and healthy. We will continue to educate the team regarding the importance of the protocols and remain committed to operating within the protocols." The NFL said the Packers had cooperated fully with the league's investigation.
A coalition of 10 states is suing the Biden administration over its vaccine mandate for healthcare workers. The states say that the vaccine requirement threatens the jobs of millions of healthcare workers and could, quote, exacerbate an alarming shortage in healthcare fields. The vaccine mandate would impact 17 million workers at healthcare facilities that receive federal funding. And Veterans Day is coming up. Today, New York City officials paid tribute to those who have served, and NTD was at the ceremony.
Can you see by the dawn's early light?
The ceremony, organized by the Queensborough president and district attorney, was held at the Queens Vietnam Veterans Memorial in New York City.
I remember the men and women coming home from Vietnam. I remember the disrespect they were given. I remember what you all went through when you came home after fighting for our country.
She said veterans should be respected by the people. Others added they should be respected every day of the year.
I'm of the belief every day is Veterans Day, not just one day of the year.
We should always be honoring our veterans because they've given up part of their lives to serve their country, and most of us continue to serve our country.
4 veterans were honored as part of the ceremony.
Congratulations on today.
One of them became a soldier especially early.
I mean, I went in when I was 17. So about 2 or 3 weeks after high school, I went into the military and was off to training. So I was very young.
New York City will also hold the nation's largest Veterans Day parade on Thursday.
And NTD reporters will be at tomorrow's parade in New York City, bringing you the highlights of the nation's largest Veterans Day festivities. Make sure you tune in at 6:30 p.m. Eastern. And the First Lady today sends a message to kids of military members, thanking them for taking on extra roles at home and calling on Americans to consider lending more of a hand to military families across the nation.
We can and we must give our military and veteran caregiving families everything they need to care for their wounded warrior with compassion, dignity, and love.
When I was little, our dad spent so much time at Shepherd's Center Hospital because of his brain injury that I got used to talking to other children who had moms and dads in the hospital.
Gabby admits they were scared to speak in front of everyone, but said she knew they needed to remind other caregiver kids that they aren't alone. She says it can be tough, but she plays her role to bring light to the family. A new report found more than 2 million kids live with a disabled veteran, and many of those kids have to take on additional responsibilities to help out. The First Lady showed gratitude for Gabby, her sister, and the millions of other kids out there who have a bigger role to play for their veteran parents. And the race for Seattle City Attorney is officially over, and a Republican has won. This after the self-described abolitionist candidate conceded on Tuesday following the final vote tally. Although local, this race was seen nationally as reflective of 2 polarized approaches to policing. The final votes were tallied Monday, and Republican Ann Davison came out on top with a 4 percentage point lead over opponent Nicole Thomas Kennedy. Leading up to the election, conservatives raised concerns about what it would mean for Seattle if Thomas Kennedy were elected. The nonpartisan candidate positioned herself as an abolitionist and vowed not to prosecute misdemeanor crimes. Thomas Kennedy has also supported defunding the police and called property destruction a moral imperative. Davison, the city attorney-elect, was previously a Democrat. She switched parties and became a Republican in 2020. Davison's Law and Order platform received bipartisan support. And the race between one of the most powerful Democrats in New Jersey and a truck driver has ended. New Jersey Senate President Steve Sweeney has conceded to truck driver Ed Durr. Durr is now the senator-elect in New Jersey's 3rd legislative district. And sometimes fiction meets reality. For Lieutenant Colonel Matthew Lohmeyer, seeing Shen Yun was one such experience. The ousted Space Force commander says the classical Chinese dance performance conveys an important message for the world today.
I thought the show was phenomenal. Very important message, timely message in a world that's giving in to the communist impulse. And couldn't be more grateful for the work that these performers do.
Lohmeyer wrote a book called Irresistible Revolution, which talks about communism in the United States military. He says he appreciates that Shen Yun is reviving the traditional culture of China before the days of communism.
I sensed a warning in the performance. We've become so disconnected from that divine spirit and so connected to a ruined spirit. This is a call and a beckoning to come back to the divine influence, and it resonates with societies, I think, across the globe, and so it's timely, important, and it's a message that we all need today.
Ancient Chinese culture is said to be divinely inspired. Shen Yun portrays these traditional values on stage through dance and music.
I've never experienced anything like this, and I've been to the theaters back east and in the west, and this is just, it's so lifting, and yeah, the love that is shared in telling their stories, there's nothing like it. It's worth coming every night to see the same performance.
Well, this is my 6th time seeing the show, meaning repetitive years. And every time I see it, I'm just totally amazed at the performers and the message that I see here. Shen Yun, Heavenly Beings. It talks about inspiration, about how we all should be able to learn how to get along together on this planet. But even more, it talks about our immortality. If we believe in immortality, that by doing the right thing, following the golden rule, we should all somehow learn to get together and be one, and be able to, of course, follow the good things in life.
Another really important part of the performance tonight was that it draws awareness to all of the evils of the Chinese Communist regime today, like organ harvesting.
The classical dance troupe travels around the world. However, Shen Yun cannot perform in China because the show portrays the communist regime's persecution of faith.
Every year I see it, it talks to me more in my heart about freedom and how lucky we are here in this country to be able to express our freedoms. People need to come and see and experience Shen Yun, breathe it in, because it's something good for the body, it's good for the mind, and above all, it's good for the soul.
Up next, a word from the U.S. Postmaster General. We'll hear what he says about your packages during peak holiday season. And China is by far the world's leader in drones, but now American manufacturers are trying to rely less on China. We speak with a drone maker for details. Find out more here on NTD News. The Postal Service is ready for your packages during peak holiday season. That's the word from Postmaster General Louis DeJoy. DeJoy's assertion comes after he previously apologized for the slow mail delivery during last year's peak season. It also follows the unveiling of a 10-year plan for USPS. Changes in the plan include longer first-class mail delivery times and cuts to post office hours. The Postal Service started implementing the new service standards last month. USPS says the service changes will affect about 40% of first-class mail. DeJoy is a major donor to former President Trump and the GOP, and many Democrats have called for him to be removed from his post. And drone footage captures the migrant caravan in southern Mexico. As the caravan advances towards the U.S., Texas builds a barrier with shipping containers in hopes of stopping it. The Texas governor's office says the state began using shipping containers to block border crossers starting in October. The office says Governor Greg Abbott first directed the state to use the containers to block low-level water crossing areas. The shipping container placement is used to divert illegal aliens to areas with more Border Patrol agents and police. The governor's spokesperson says thousands of National Guardsmen and state troopers are being deployed to place the containers, as well as erect additional barriers with razor wire. The spokesperson told news outlets she would not comment on how Abbott obtained the shipping containers, nor how many are being deployed by state troopers. And China dominates the drone market. The rest of the world doesn't even come close. But now American drone makers are trying to rely less on China. NTD's Arlene Richards reports.
American drone makers are trying to rely less on China, which currently dominates the industry. NTD spoke with drone maker Arthur Erickson to learn more.
China started utilizing drone technology for agriculture, for infrastructure inspection, even in military aspects and things like that, sooner and more profoundly than us in the Western world. They're ahead of us in a lot of ways in that industry, and we're just now realizing the Western countries here, we're just now realizing how important drone technology really is going to be for the future of a bunch of different industries.
Erickson is the CEO of Helio, which makes precision crop spraying drones. He says drones will touch almost every facet of modern life, including agriculture, logistics, cargo, military, security, media, and so on.
China historically has had a near monopoly on a lot of the raw materials that are utilized in the drone industry, a lot of the magnetic materials, a lot of the lithium that makes the batteries that power the drones. They've controlled a lot of the flow of that raw material. Now, a lot of American companies, including ours, are searching for alternative routes for those raw materials.
And the consequences of letting China take the lead may be huge. Currently, the most dominant drone manufacturer in China is DJI.
The police forces and fire departments and whatnot of this country, the United States, also just turned to DJI. There's some reports to suggest that a lot of this data that these police stations and these fire departments were capturing has been transferred unknowingly back to certain government elements in China.
The New York City Police Department still uses them despite the concerns. Arlene Richards, NTD News.
Coming up, San Francisco's District Attorney Chesa Boudin is one step closer to possibly being recalled. The city's elections department has confirmed a date for a special election next year. As more electric vehicles are produced, more charging stations are needed. Today, a charging network celebrates its 200th station. That and more here on NTD News.
Secure, the true solution for your digital privacy and security. Secure is a private and secure messaging and email solution hosted in Switzerland, using military-grade encryption and Swiss privacy laws, giving you true privacy. Secure is 100% private and does not collect or sell any of your personal data. Secure's Helix technology connects you securely to our Swiss servers without the need of a VPN, guaranteeing privacy and security for all your communications. Secure Messenger doesn't require your phone number or any personal data that hackers target. Chat by Invites allows you to chat privately and securely with anyone outside of your secure network without the need for others to download Secure. Secure Send offers you a private and secure way to email anyone outside of Secure. You won't find this level of privacy or security on any other email or instant messaging application. Visit secure.com. Regain and protect your privacy today.
90% of news outlets in the United States are controlled by 6 corporations. They're not out to tell you the truth of what's happening. They're out to tell you the picture of the world that they represent. The mission of the Epoch Times is to chase the truth, to ground all statements in facts, and prevent people from being misled. This is a battle between truth and deceit. Subscribe today and join the Americans who are seeking truth and tradition. We'd love to have you on board.
The San Francisco Department of Elections has set the date for District Attorney Chesa Boudin's recall election. City locals blame the DA for the city's increasing crime and lack of criminal prosecution. We hear more from NTD's Cynthia Kai.
San Francisco District Attorney Chesa Boudin is now facing a recall. On Tuesday, the San Francisco Department of Elections confirmed a special election will be held on June 7, 2022. Boudin assumed the role in 2020 through San Francisco's ranked choice voting system. Locals say he is responsible for the city's rising crime rates.
There's a perception that he's not the choice of the majority. So that's part of it. So he doesn't have a mandate. But I think the citizens have witnessed that a lot of criminals are getting out right away. They're getting arrested with GPS ankle monitors, so there's no consequences to them being arrested, and crime is up.
Barberini explained that under Boudin's leadership, property crime and theft have dramatically increased. He cited the closure of multiple Walgreens and reduced hours for select Target and Safeway stores in response to rising theft. According to financial statements filed last week, the campaign to recall Boudin has raised over $1.6 million, whereas the anti-recall side raised around $650,000. The recall of Chesa Boudin became a bipartisan effort, with both a Democratic and a Republican-led effort to oust the DA.
Liberal, progressive, Democrat, Republican, non-party, it doesn't matter. Across the board, everyone was signing that petition.
Recall organizers say they will focus their efforts on continuing raising awareness and support. Now that the recall is on the ballot, we are laser focused on getting our message out via doors, phones, and airwaves to help ensure San Francisco has a DA that makes public safety their #1 priority. The Safer Without Boudin campaign said in a statement to the San Francisco Chronicle. If Boudin is ousted, Mayor London Breed will choose a replacement to serve out the rest of his term. Boudin's June 7th recall will be combined with the statewide primary election. Cynthia Kai, NTD News, California.
One company announced the opening of its 200th electric vehicle charging station in California. It means more people can quickly charge their vehicles while they shop for the holidays. We hear more from NTD's David Lamb.
These fast charging stations can fully charge a car in 15 to 40 minutes compared to 6 to 8 hours at other stations, according to a representative on Tuesday.
Yes, so these are fast chargers. So what does that mean? You are getting 150 kilowatt and actually at this location as well, 350 kilowatts of charge.
The stations also run on solar power and are part of Electrify America's charging network in the U.S. In 3 years, they've installed 200 charging stations in California. Tesla, Volkswagen, and the new Polestar were seen at the stations. So this Polestar 2 vehicle has a one-pedal drive system where you could fully stop the car by just easing off the gas pedal. It's one of the innovations such as the fast charging systems at Valley Fair, a Silicon Valley mall. One representative from the shopping center property said there's a high usage of the charging stations in California.
Know that our customers coming to our property for shopping and dining and entertainment want that service when they come.
It costs 43 cents per kilowatt hour to charge. This was a one-year project, and the deputy director of San Jose's energy department told us each station usually costs $30,000 if all goes to plan.
The city announced that they want to be carbon neutral by the year 2030. It's the first major city in the United States to set out that aspiration.
There are 14 stations at this new location. The city has plans to reduce carbon emissions by 50% by 2030. David Lamb, NTD News, California.
Coming up, more bad news for China's debt-ridden real estate sector. Another Chinese developer misses a bond payment. And the world's largest search engine just lost an appeal in an EU court ruling. It means Google will be fined $2.8 billion. That and more on NTD News. Many asset managers have been backing away from the Chinese real estate bond market, but Goldman Sachs is making additional investments in the sector. NTD's Tiffany Meyer tells us what's behind the company's move.
Another Chinese real estate company is struggling to pay back its debt. Developer Fantasia saw its shares plunge 50%. That's after the company said it can't promise to pay back other debts. Fantasia already missed a $200 million payment due October 4th. All this set against a backdrop of mounting debt pressure in China's real estate sector. Over the years, the sector accumulated around $5 trillion of debt before Beijing set a cap on how much they can borrow. Chinese developers have to pay back over $90 billion next year, and some analysts say more than a third could have difficulty paying their debt. As for Fantasia, it says it's negotiating with some lenders about pushing back the due date for paying its loans. Also on the financial front, China's now infamous real estate developer Evergrande is back in the hot seat. The company has become the most high-profile example of major debt crisis in the sector, but now faces even more challenges. The Chinese real estate developer was due to pay an about $150 million bond coupon on Wednesday, but some bondholders didn't receive their payments by the end of the business day in Asia. What's more, the company is also looking down the barrel of about $8 billion worth of debt obligations to foreign investors over the next year. And its founder may have to pay at least part of that debt out of his own pocket. Hong Kong media reports that Evergrande chairman Xi Jiaying is using 2 luxury mansions in the city as collateral to get bank loans. One of the properties is valued at $100 million. As Evergrande grapples with the weight of its obligations, Chinese real estate debts have become one of the most troubled assets in the global financial market. But one of the world's biggest investment banks seems to see it as an opportunity and is buying up those debts in droves. Angus Bell is a member of Goldman's portfolio management team. He told Bloomberg that the property sector has been the key driver of Chinese growth over the past 2 decades. It is unlikely the government will tolerate the impact on growth that would come about if it were to allow such a large number of developers to fail. So what exactly is Goldman Sachs doing? Bell said the financial institution has been buying high-yield bonds issued by Chinese property developers in U.S. dollars. That's on top of investing in the Chinese regime's local currency bonds.
And as production costs rise in China and transporting products gets harder and more expensive, clothing companies are moving production closer to U.S. and European stores. NTD's Faye Corder has more.
Large fashion brands are pulling production out of Asia. Italian fashion company Benetton, for example, moved more than 10% of its production out of Asia and into Europe. One factory owner in Bosnia says his shoe business has seen an increase in demand.
Tens of companies have contacted us already.
Some manufacturers regard this shift as an exceptional opportunity.
It is a chance for us to increase the production, to increase the capacity.
And Hugo Boss also plans to shift production closer to final markets. All these strategic transitions will give firms more control over the production process and transport costs. The CEO of Future and Design, Nicolina Womack, says many people just see the cheap labor in Asia, but overlook all the other costs.
Because a lot of times they're not thinking of tariffs, they're not thinking of container shipping costs. They're not thinking of the amount of, again, that minimum order quantities that you need to be able to hit for it to make sense. You're not counting the inventory and the warehousing costs.
Womack's company is based in Utah.
You have it manufactured here, then we can also have it shipped directly to the customer. And so then you have 2-day shipping, 3-day shipping. The cost on that is significantly less.
Local manufacturing also benefits the community.
You as a brand and a consumer are able to help pay better wages for these individuals that are manufacturing.
It also reduces the carbon footprint.
Shipping container, ocean shipping counts for 18% of our total water pollution. When you do nearshoring or onshoring, you cut that out altogether.
The fashion industry's shift gives brands more flexibility to cope with bottlenecks in the supply chain. Faye Corder, NTD News.
And in France, dozens of military service members developed serious medical conditions after receiving a COVID vaccine. NTD's David Vivas speaks to a former official about the vaccine mandate for the French military.
Side effects from the COVID-19 vaccine is sparking concern in the French military. According to data released by Gendarmes Libres, an advocacy group against the vaccine mandate for members of the military and law enforcement, out of approximately 200,000 soldiers who have received at least one dose of the vaccine. 357 adverse events were declared by military doctors and nurses. Of those, 40 are serious, meaning they are lethal or life-threatening. In reality, these numbers may be underreported, according to former Army official Alexandre Juvin-Brunet.
We don't know the real figures of side effects because all of these are underreported. In civilians, that number might be 10 to 20 times higher.
According to the data, 343 out of the 357 cases involve the Pfizer vaccine. Service members face sanctions if they don't get the shots, such as being dismissed from the military.
Service members I know say they're facing something that's never happened before. If they refuse the vaccine, that means they're disobeying a direct order.
He says military leaders are following the French government's instructions, but those instructions could be against the law.
There's a law that forbids all armed forces from being vaccinated in the same year. This is a safety measure to prevent troops from developing side effects at the same time. This law was not respected here, as service members are being pushed to get vaccinated at the same time, which means this might harm the operational capacity of the military.
This situation in France echoes a similar case in the United States. Last week, an Alabama-based Army surgeon reported cases of heart inflammation in her unit. She testified at a Capitol Hill roundtable, saying military leaders ignored her warnings about the shots. David Vives, NTD News.
The world's most popular search engine has just lost an appeal for $2.8 billion. Google has been accused of abusing its power by giving its own shopping platform an advantage over others. NTD's Chenny Wu has the details.
On Wednesday, a top European Union court rejected Google's appeal of a $2.8 billion fine issued by Competition Commissioner Margrethe Vestager. Regulators say the tech giant abuses its massive online reach by giving its own shopping recommendations an illegal advantage in search results.
Google was displaying its own services prominently at the top or near the top of the first search result pages, irrespective of how good or relevant it was.
During a briefing in Brussels, European Commission spokesperson Ariana Podesta said the judgment branded Google's conduct unlawful and provides the necessary legal clarity for future cases concerning digital markets. The court's ruling is a major win in the EU's effort to regulate big tech. It's the first in a trio of decisions that have seen Google rack up a total of 8.25 billion euros in antitrust fines over the last decade. Commissioner Vestager subsequently took on Amazon, Apple, and Facebook, where investigations are still ongoing. Chenny Wu, NTD News.
The European Union is close to imposing more sanctions on Belarus, with approval as early as next week, according to 3 EU diplomats. The EU and NATO accuse President Alexander Lukashenko of using migrants fleeing the Middle East as a weapon to pressure the West. The new round of sanctions is meant to target certain Belarusian officials. The EU says those officials organized the migrant arrivals in revenge for sanctions over human rights abuses.
Hundreds of migrants huddled in freezing temperatures near Poland's border with Belarus on Tuesday night, as Polish guards and razor wire fences blocked their entry into the European Union. Officials said the EU is closing in on another round of sanctions on Belarus, targeting some 30 entities including the country's foreign minister and airline Belavia. It accused Minsk of encouraging migrants from Africa and the Middle East to illegally enter the EU, what it calls gangster-style tactics and hybrid warfare. They claim it's revenge for Western sanctions on President Alexander Lukashenko's government over human rights abuses following its violent crackdown on protests against a disputed election last year. At least 7 migrants have died in the months-long standoff, and several thousand are now stranded at the border. A Polish spokesman claimed Belarusian security personnel were firing empty shots into the air, simulating dangerous events, while also providing tools to help migrants destroy the border fence. Poland's border guard recorded over 600 illegal attempts to breach the frontier this week and detained over a dozen people, primarily Iraqis. Lithuania has also reported a surge in attempted migrant crossings and declared a state of emergency along its Belarus border. Lukashenko's government has denied engineering the migrant crisis and summoned Polish officials on Tuesday to protest what it calls unfounded allegations about its involvement. Meanwhile, Poland denies accusations by humanitarian groups that it is violating the international right to asylum by hustling migrants back into Belarus instead of accepting their applications for protection.
Coming up, billed as the world's highest external building trek, Hudson Yards City Climb lets visitors come face to face with New York's famous skyline. And a very rare cotton candy colored lobster was found in Maine. It's a 1 in 100 million catch. Find out more in just a moment here on NTD News.
Hello, I'm Mike Lindell, and I'm here to tell you about my new product from MyPillow, towels that actually work. Watch this absorbency test. Here's another towel that we randomly went out and bought. Here's one of my towels with the nice design. I don't know if you can see this, but you could line a swimming pool with this. This is crazy. Get rid of it. Towels that actually work.
The new MyPillow towels are exclusively made with 100% USA combed cotton with proprietary technology and with maximum absorbency. They dry you faster and are guaranteed to work.
I'm interrupting this commercial right now. Retailers have canceled MyPillow. And to thank you for all your support, I'm going to pass the savings directly on to you. Go to MyPillow.com to get deep discounts on all MyPillow products. For example, you get my dog beds for as low as $19.99. Or for a limited time, you can get my 6-piece towel sets, regularly $109.99, now only $39.99. The lowest price ever with your promo code.
New York has a new attraction, and it's 1,300 feet above street level. NTD's Andrew Thomas has the details.
We're coming out to 1189.
Advertised as the world's highest external building climb, City Climb at 30 Hudson Yards lets visitors come face to face with the city's famous skyline. No railings and no glass windows. Climbers are equipped with specially designed safety harnesses that let them ascend an outdoor staircase.
We're going to have those urban explorers who are really just looking for something wonderful to do in New York City. We're also then going to have those people who really want to prove to themselves that they can overcome not only their fears or their hurdles.
The first lookout is known as the cliff. Visitors can then ascend to the top platform and lean out over the edge to look down at the Empire State Building. Once the climber sets foot on the top platform, they are 1,271 feet above 10th Avenue. Climbers are then encouraged to push out over the edge and spread out their arms.
So we are at the top of the world. We are on the apex of City Climb experience here on 30 Hudson Yards, the top of 30 Hudson Yards, about 150 feet above the above edge, which is just down there. But we are on top of the apex up here.
The $185 experience starts at the edge, 30 Hudson Yards outdoor observation deck. City Climb opened November 9th. Andrew Thomas, NTD News.
A pair of diamond bracelets, once owned by Marie-Antoinette, have sold for $8.2 million. The sale smashed estimates. Christie's auction house predicted the bracelets would fetch up to $4 million. The bracelets boast 140 to 150 carats of diamonds. It's believed Marie-Antoinette paid what would be equivalent to $4.6 million for them. During the French Revolution, she sent them out of the country for safekeeping. Christie's says they had been kept in a private royal collection for more than 2 centuries. And a very rare catch in Maine last weekend. It happened in Casco Bay. Lobster man Bill Coppersmith named it Hattie after his granddaughter.
Hey guys, Mark here from Get Maine Lobster. Super duper excited to show you what is called a cotton candy lobster. It is so rare. There's only 1 in 100 million cotton. We caught this right here in Portland, Casco Bay. Just look how beautiful that lobster is. We're not going to sell it. We're not going to cook it. This is a beautiful lobster, and we want to preserve it.
Hattie is now at Get Maine Lobster in Portland. The organization said it's talking to area organizations and aquariums that might want to adopt it. And that's all for today's news. Thanks for tuning in. I'm Stephanie Cox.